makes them so much harder.
All right. So are technical issues resolved?
Yes.
All right. So we're good to go?
We're good to go.
All right. If everyone can mute, then that would be great. Just for the folks who are organizers and panelists, such as Tim, Arthur, and Peter, please turn on your camera right now if you feel comfortable doing so. We're just going to do quick introductions, image descriptions, and then we'll get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day. If you didn't know, it is a day every May. I think it's like the third or fourth Thursday of every May, where we celebrate accessibility and just promote awareness around digital accessibility. So, and this is not our, holiday, so to speak. It's something that is happening globally, and we are participating in. We do that by organizing the Digital Inclusion Conference, NYC DiCon. We've been doing that since 2018, and the DiCon conference is aimed at promoting awareness around accessibility, inclusion, and internet human rights. Last year, our session was on getting started with website accessibility. This year, we are covering maps, data visualizations, and accessible design, and we're excited to present to you today. But first, we're just going to do some introductory stuff, and we're going to introduce ourselves, do an access check, and we'll get the show on the road. So my name is Wale Sabri. You can call me Wally or Wale, and I identify as blind. My pronouns are he/him, and my image description is as follows, and we encourage folks to do that. I'm a big fan of image descriptions whenever they are relevant. So my image description is as follows. I'm a Middle Eastern man in my mid-30s with olive skin, brownish hazelish eyes. I have long, dark, curly hair that I've been growing since before the pandemic. And I have it tied up in a ponytail to look presentable today. Currently sitting in a room wearing a long sleeve button-up blue shirt with some patterns on it. And finally, there is a tactile painting behind me because I'm a big fan of accessible art. Arthur, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Tim?
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Arthur Jacobs. I'm the housing coordinator at MOPD, but work closely with Wale on digital accessibility. I also am blind, Caucasian male with blonde hair and blue eyes, and getting older. And we want to welcome everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where in the world you are. Thank you.
Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Keene. I work for OTI, which is the Office of Technology and Innovation. And I'm a programmer, and I've been working with Wale for quite a few years now on accessibility issues for mapping applications in particular, and Arthur more recently over the last year. And I find it very rewarding. I'm very pleased to be a participant here, honored that I've been asked to join. In terms of a description, some people call me Santa because I kind of look like Santa. I've got a long gray beard, glasses, a little bit skinny for Santa, or it could be maybe a tall, rather lawn gnome instead of a Santa. I'm wearing a Mets cap and a headset, and I'm in my office in Brooklyn. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And Peter, our audio describer for today, you want to just introduce yourself and do an image description if you're cool with that?
Yes. Hi, I'm Peter Trojic. I'll be doing audio description for you today. I will probably remain off camera, but in case I am on camera, I'm a mixed race man East Asian and Eastern European, and I'm sitting in front of a window.
Thank you, Peter. And thanks to everyone who made this happen. We put this together as a group, starting with our intern, Saba Iqbal, who put the slides together for us and found a lot of the images. Arthur Jacobs, who made the slides accessible and also added some more images. Sean Gribben, who also created some images for us. And of course, Tim for having his expertise with us as a GIS architect. So thank you to our interpreters as well, our captioners, and to Peter, our audio describer. So just let's now turn off our videos and put the slides up so we can get started with an access check. Alrighty, so the slides are up. Let us know if you aren't able to see them. Great. I don't know why Zoom is telling me we're in a practice session, but we're not, right? Anyway, if I could just get verbal. Okay. All right. All right. So great. Somebody just confirmed they can see the slides. Wonderful. Live stream audience can see everything. That's what we want. Wonderful. All right. So great. So let's start with an access check. We encourage you to start your meetings and events with an access check just to let folks know what accessibility features are available. Today we have American Sign Language interpreting. Since this is a Zoom webinar, we will be spotlighting the interpreters so they are persistent on screen at all times for the benefit of those who would like to have American Sign Language interpreting. We also have human captioning provided today. So if you'd like to turn that on, just use the captioning icon in the bottom of the Zoom toolbar or the bottom of the Zoom window. We recommend always that you use human captioning whenever possible and avoid using automated captions unless in a pinch. Finally, today we are experimenting with having open audio description for the first time. This will be available to everyone instead of shuffling off blind folks into a separate channel and requiring them to do that extra step of joining an extra channel. All you have to do is just join and accessibility is there for you. Same with the live stream on Disability Unite. It will have audio description, ASL, and CART all at once. Finally, in terms of participating, feel free to drop messages in the chat. However, we have turned off the chat for participants. So if you do send a message as an attendee, only the panelists will see it. And this is because we have some folks in the audience that are screen reader users and have requested to turn off the chat so that the audio doesn't get too busy with chat messages constantly coming in. So you can send messages, just do know that the only folks that will get those messages are us, the panelists. So if you do have any questions or if something is going wrong, like something's not appearing on screen, or if you're losing us in some way, feel free to check in. Also, if you just want to, give us some kudos throughout, feel free to do that. That's the end of our access check. Now we're just going to have quickly Peter. Peter's going to describe the general slide deck layout, what it looks like, what are some of the repeating icons, and then later on, Peter will just read the slide titles when I ask him to, as well as describe any images that are specific to those slides. So that's the format that we're going to use today. And we encourage you to be as descriptive as possible when you present. So Peter?
Before Peter does that, I just want to mention also that in the chat, I'm going to send the stream text link. So if you want to view the transcript in a separate window, you can do that. So that is in the chat now.
Great.
Okay, so just there are two types of screen on this presentation. There is a title screen, and then there's a screen that outlines the presentation itself. And on each slide, there is 4 logos in each corner. The upper left corner being the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities logo. In the upper right corner, there is a colorful rainbow accessibility icons on a rainbow banner. The icons are of a wheelchair user, for neurodiversity, sign language, and etc. And on the lower left corner, there is the Twitter symbol, and next to it, it says @NYC Disabilities. And on the lower right corner, it says nyc.gov/disabilities. On the titled screens, there is a picture of the New York City skyline, and on the screen with the screens with the information, there is a dark background with white writing.
Thank you, Peter. Next slide is, all right, about MOPD.
Wally,
anything there? Go for
would
it.
you like me to? Okay, great. So voice phone number 212-788-2830. Video phone is 646-396-5830. The website is nyc.gov/disability. And then the Twitter is @NYC Disabilities. Facebook is @NYC Disabilities. Instagram is @NYC_disabilities. And YouTube is /Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities.
All right, so you just have to search for us. There's no username. That's quick and easy. Yeah, thank you, Peter. And so we are the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. We're collaborating with Disability Unite today, as well as Office of Tech Innovation, otherwise known as DO-IT, Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, or maybe formerly known. They're kind of in a transition. So those are the groups that are bringing you today's event. But I specifically, and Arthur, we represent the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. And we advocate for people with disabilities in city government by providing consulting services to other city agencies. So we act as the accessibility consultants for all other city agencies. We answer 311 calls and share resources with people with disabilities on accessible housing, transportation, employment, education. We also follow up on complaints. We do raise awareness publicly as well about being more accessible, or just the rights of people with disabilities. We've also participated in the Disability Pride Parades in 2015 to 2018. We've participated in Disability Unite festivals as well. So that's just a little bit about us. We're not going to linger on too long here. Next slide. Today's agenda, nothing to describe here. So we want to, so today's topic is maps, data visualizations, and accessible design. So we will be starting with some introductory and foundational stuff. So if you're a digital accessibility expert, you probably know a lot of what we're going to cover in the first few minutes. But we want to make it accessible to all folks joining, whether you are new to digital accessibility or not, so that you have enough information to get what you are coming to consume here. So we're going to start with some intro stuff, and then we're going to get into accessible design. We are starting to experiment with an accessibility first approach, which we will talk about our experience trying to implement. Then we're going to get into our recommendations for making maps and data visualizations accessible. Some basic ones first, and then getting into some more advanced interactive maps and data visualizations. And finally, we're going to stress the importance of testing with the disability community. That's our agenda for today. Next slide. All right, so some foundational stuff about digital accessibility. Is there, okay, I don't think so. So what we're going to cover here in this section is whom are we designing for or with, hopefully. What are the standards and what tools do people with disabilities use, otherwise known as assistive technologies? Next slide. Peter. You're muted. I don't know.
You skipped a slide. Go back one.
Oh, which one?
Go back. Yes. Okay, so the first slide is for whom are we designing? And on the slide, you see a image of 4 accessibility icons in neon blue, orange, pink, and green, respectively. It's an eye, a hand, an ear, and a brain. And the text reads, people with disabilities that affect eyes, ears, hands, brain.
Great. Thank you, Peter. So if you are in the digital accessibility space, you probably have heard this a million times. Disabilities that affect the eyes, ears, hands, and brain. So whom are we yes, so for those who didn't register on Zoom, they could just view the Disability Unite stream. So that's just an extra way. You don't have to join both. Somebody just asked in the chat. All right, so for whom are we designing? Disabilities that affect the eyes, ears, hands, and brain. So this is probably something that we've heard a lot if you are in this space. So eyes, folks who are blind or have low vision and might use assistive technologies. Ears, folks who are deaf or hard of hearing. Hands, so folks who might have trouble using a mouse and might use an alternative such as a keyboard or switch control or any other assistive technology. Brain, folks who with cognitive or intellectual or developmental disabilities, folks with learning disabilities. And we also, since we are in New York City, we like to say that, you know, folks with limited English proficiencies as well could benefit from things like plain language and instructions and things of that nature. Not to say that folks with limited English proficiency are disabled, but they just end up benefiting from some of these standards. Next slide. WCAG, the standards. So the World Wide Web Consortium has created these standards. I like to describe W3C as a bunch of highly qualified nerds who make up the rules of the internet or for websites. And they created in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which nobody knows how to pronounce it. Is it WCAG, WCAG, WCAG? Depends on how you ask, right? So the current version that we are on is WCAG 2.1, which has been around since 2018. And there are levels of compliance, starting with the lowest level, A, then the medium level is AA, and the highest level is AAA. Most organizations and governments do comply with level AA, which is the healthy medium. And in terms of which standard, the current standard is WCAG 2.1. And so just be aware of that as an advocate, because some folks might still be using WCAG 2.0 or a lesser standard. So it's just good to know which one is currently being adopted by folks around the world. Next slide. In continuing with the WCAG criteria, I call it WCAG. It revolves around 4 core principles. Once again, if you're in the digital accessibility field, you probably heard this more times than you'd like. So sorry for repeating it one more time. The 4 core principles spell out the acronym POUR, P-O-U-R. So do think about this as you are pouring content into your website. And they stand for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable, and I'm going to try to use these in the context of maps and data visualizations. So in terms of perceivable, will people be able to perceive the information that is on your map or your data visualization? So for maps, a text alternative could be alt text if it's a simple map, or if it's a more advanced map, having that list, having the data available as a list indexed by headings and with filters so that folks can filter the information. For data visualization, so, in many cases, you can include that data in an HTML table, right, to make it accessible. Of course, we're simplifying here. There are much more subtleties and nuances. Operable, will people with disabilities be able to operate your map or your data visualizations? So if there are touch gestures, such as pinch to zoom, there should be on-screen controls, such as a zoom in and a zoom out button that are persistent and always available to users who cannot use those gestures. Do buttons have keyboard access and accessibility labels so that users know how to get to them and what function they, they are for? So, and then understandable, will people with disabilities be able to understand what they're doing, or, the information conveyed through your map, or how to use your map, or data visualization? So instructions go a long way here, as well as making sure that announcements, status announcements, are announced by screen readers, so that you're not just using, visuals or color alone to notify people of things. Error messaging should be available in, as visual, but also as text, and things of that nature. Finally, robust will kind of just speaks to how many devices and operating systems and assistive technologies can support your map, right? Will your map or data visualization have a good experience on as many devices as possible, as many browsers as possible, as many operating systems as possible, right? And as many assistive technologies as possible. So making sure that in your testing that you have a good mix of Windows, Mac, iOS, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, right? And then different operating systems different screen readers, maybe such as JAWS, NVDA, VoiceOver, right? So that just can really help you reach that robustness, because you never know what device or screen reader or browser or operating system combination a user is going to be using. Next slide. What is assistive technology, Peter?
Yes, on the screen, you'll see an image of a man in a power chair. He's using a mouth stick, which allows him to use his tablet that's in front of him.
Right. And so he's using his mouth to hold that stick, and that stick is tapping parts of the screen. Is that correct? Just so I...
Correct.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for knowing the name of that. We didn't know what that was called earlier, and we were debating it. So good to know. So assistive technologies is defined as any tool that a person with a disability can use to access the physical or virtual environment. This is my favorite definition of it. And assistive technologies could be as basic as eyeglasses or crutches or canes or wheelchairs, right? And they could be, advanced tech such as, voice assistants or, other means. So here are some examples. So screen readers for blind users such as myself. So I'm using a screen reader today. It is reading aloud the contents of the screen. And we'll be doing a quick demo for y'all a little bit later on how screen readers can interact with maps and other data visualizations. Magnifiers for low vision users, they enlarge the content of the screen. And alternatives to keyboards such as voice commands, trackball mouse, sip and puff devices, switch controls, and so on and so forth. Those are generally used by folks with motor function disabilities, right? In order to just have alternative inputs, right? If they can't use their hands, they might be able to use something else like their voice or their eyes or their mouth. So, next slide. All right, so intro to accessible design.
On this screen, you
All right.
have the title of it. Do you need me to read it or no?
Go ahead. Oh, no, I'm just gonna, if there's no images, right?
No.
Okay, I'll just go for it. Yeah. All right. So I like to frame accessibility in this way, that we've all sort of heard this analogy about, and I'm sure somebody else has used it about accessibility as well, that it takes a village to raise a child. And so if our child is accessibility, it takes all of our us collectively, our effort collectively, to make sure that accessibility is up to par and is a good experience for users. So this means looking at your experience from beginning to the end, right? From the beginning stages of thinking about it and your discovery and research phases, your UX phases, right? Your design and implementation and engineering phases, your quality assurance, right? Making sure that accessibility is always considered in every step of the way. Some quick examples, of different roles and how different roles can contribute. Content creators, right, can make sure that they are using in plain language, they're writing instructions that are helpful, and writing alt text for images, right? Graphic designers can generally include accessibility by making sure they are including good color contrast and focusing on the typography, making sure fonts are accessible, right? And just the general design and look is clean and easy to see. UX designers, right, make sure that the user, the experience is usable by all. So basically working on different flows or journeys, right, or user experiences, not just for one type of user, but considering what a keyboard user is going to go through, what a screen reader user is going to go through, etc. Developers, engineers, right, they are responsible for creating accessible templates, accessible components, but also implementing all of the accessibility information that is passed down to them from UX or design, graphic design, or content creators. Finally, quality assurance, right? Quality assurance should always include accessibility testing. And sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the only thing, right? And so when you get to your quality assurance step, and that's where you start thinking about accessibility, you've already missed out on a lot of opportunities because you've already made decisions that might exclude people with disabilities, right? As an example, if I've already built a building and I put in a staircase, I can't go back and undo that staircase, right? So in many ways, the digital realm could be that way if you've already built a big product, right? And it's already functioning in a specific way. So that's why it's important to include accessibility from the beginning. Next slide.
Okay, on this slide, you have 4 white images on blue backgrounds, each representing one of the following: physical access, cognitive disabilities, ASL, and blindness.
Great. So a lot similar to eyes, ears, hands, and brain, right? Just consider various users when you are designing. So a common mistake that folks do is design the whole experience around using a mouse, which works for maybe a majority of users that are able-bodied, but unfortunately that tends to create problems for users who don't use a mouse, right? It could leave screen reader and keyboard users stranded in the middle of an experience where keyboard access is dropped out or an item is missing keyboard access. Or if there's a modal pop-up that popped up somewhere on the screen and keyboard focus and screen reader focus is not taken there, right? So it's good to think about the whole experience from various perspectives. So just in the same way as you create an entire mouse experience in your design and different screens and what the mouse is going to do, you should be also considering blind users who use screen readers, right? By including, yes, we will get into maps very soon. Yes. So So yeah, consider blind users who use screen readers. So making non-visual information available in non-visual formats. Low vision users, right, who use magnifiers. So making sure that your maps and data visualizations are able to fit on different screen sizes. Keyboard only or assistive technology users. So folks who don't use a mouse, but still might have vision. And then voice command users as well, making sure that you have good accessibility labels so that voice command users can give voice commands to navigate your application. All right, so I'm going to actually try to go very quickly through this next few slides so that we can get to maps and data visualizations. But here are some things to basically consider this different, like a toolkit, right, of different items that you should be familiar with in your design when you're creating maps and data visualizations, right? Accessibility labels for all items. So when you are designing that user journey, make sure that every item has a label, even if it's an icon, right? What's its accessibility label going to be? If you're actively thinking of that stuff from the beginning, in the end, you won't have to be scrambling to figure out, well, where did I miss labels, right? Making sure that, once again, not designing around for mouse users, but making sure that keyboard users are also have access to all interactable items. And then moving screen reader and keyboard focus to the appropriate areas.
On this screen, you have an image that illustrates the different user experiences for a mouse user and a screen reader user.
Right, thank you, Peter. Next slide, part 2, accessible design part 2. Can you describe the image real quick?
Yes, the image is 2 computers and a tablet and a phone on a yellow background.
Right, so this is representing basically different screen sizes, right? So making sure, like I said before, that your data visualizations and maps can fit on different screen sizes. Making sure you have good color contrasts on your maps and data visualizations so that they can users can tell the one geographic area from another or one piece of data from another. Are there instructions throughout the process to teach users how to use your product if it's a little bit more complex or has complex features? And are your content and instructions written in plain language for folks, just for anyone to understand, right? And plain language is text that could be understood by everybody from the first read. Next slide. All right, so accessibility first approach. This is something that we've been experimenting with. And by all means, we have expertise that we've accumulated over the years, but we are not also the utmost experts on this subject. So we want to just be able to put that out there up front and also let you know that, we're here to show you some of the things that we've learned. And we're going to show you some of the products that we've worked on. And we're going to share what we like about them and what we would think, what we want to improve upon them as well. So an accessibility first approach helps by, so in terms of what we wanted to do is we wanted to create an experience around using assistive technology first and then make it visually appealing to folks who are able-bodied. So we did this as an experiment with a calendar, an embedded calendar that we want to be using on nyc.gov so that agencies, right, can embed it on their homepage and list their upcoming events. So that's what we started working on in the last 6 months with Tim, who has been instrumental, right, in implementing a lot of the things that we've suggested. So next slide, I'm gonna hand it off to first Peter to just quickly describe the image, and then Tim to talk about, this calendar, how we created it and why we created it and what we included in it to make it accessible.
On this slide on the left, you have an image, which is an example of an accessible calendar.
Okay, so this was an interesting project and was kind of jammed in between other projects. So it's, while I said we've been working on it for 6 months, we haven't been working on it nonstop for 6 months. We've been working on it when we have bandwidth to do so. But basically, we were asked by the folks who manage much of the nyc.gov content to produce a new events calendar that can be used on various pages for different agencies or community boards, community groups, to easily put information about their events out in a calendar format that is accessible and also very low programming implementation effort for the people managing those web pages. So basically, this uses a simple AJAX call for a CSV file that would include a list of events through whatever date range. You have your an ISO date formatted field, followed by a few fields for your event data, and that gets read in and rendered as a calendar. And the calendar rendering, we chose to use lists rather than tables, even though it looks like a table. When you're looking at this picture here now, it looks like a normal calendar grid. There's some CSS tricks to allow you to render your lists in a grid format. So the list allows for easier navigation through the page. And then we also produce lists of headings to navigate with screen readers. So we have H2 headings for the month and for the status of what's being presented on the calendar that's visible at the time. We chose to start with H2s because this is intended as a tool or a component to be embedded on a page that would in all likelihood have an H1 somewhere else to tell us what the page is about. So after the headings of H2s, then we also have H3s as headings, and those are accessible as a list through your screen reader. And those H3s are for the days that have events. So in the calendar for December, there are a number of days with events, and there's some days without events, and we don't need to waste our time announcing dates in lists that don't have anything happening on them. So we just only provide to the screen reader the headings that have events, the days that have events, and the other ones are actually ARIA hidden, so they don't render in the screen reader, even though they do render visually. So all of those become they're also all keyboard accessible, so you can navigate the calendar by tabbing through your days and so forth. We also provided the ability to switch views of your calendar, so you could be viewing your calendar by month as a grid with the list of events, or you could switch to a week view or a day view by using the button on the right that is a view choice picker. And every time you would change a view, your focus always returns to the top H2 of the calendar, which describes the contents of what's in that view. So if you switch to a month view, you'll hear the screen reader announce something like showing 27 events for the month of December. If you switch to a week view, it might say showing 7 events for the week of December 1st, and so forth. And each each view has a back button that returns you to the previous up-chain view from which you came, so that all the navigation becomes consistent and predictable when you want to switch back and forth between views and data. There's also a modal dialog for if the user actually uses the date picker instead of one of the lists to go to a date that they're interested in. It may be next month and they don't even see it on the calendar. If you pick a date that that doesn't have anything on it, you'll get a modal dialog that announces to the screen reader that there are no events on that day, and then you clear the dialog and return back to the previous view. There's also a search component that filters events based on user input in a text field, and then creates a list of events that are keyboard accessible, that meet the search criteria, and then the user can navigate to the day with that event by picking it from the list. Anything else you wanted to cover there, Wally, that I might have missed?
What I want to do is kind of just talk about our rationalization of what we did. So I'm not going to say anything new. So just to kind of reiterate what Tim just said, in terms of a calendar, it typically looks like a table and a grid. So we initially were going to make it in an HTML table. And we wanted to try something new just because navigating a table and hearing row and column numbers and then trying to navigate a list and a heading inside a table just seems too cumbersome. So we just got rid of that table element to it, and created headings, right, with a structure. So all the days are heading 3s, I believe. And they also have keyboard access, right? So you can just tab from one day to another, but only the days that have events will show up for screen reader and keyboard users. So it's kind of, we're trying to streamline that process and make it more efficient for users. And then we created statements. Right, for the ARIA Live messaging. When you change to week view, it now says something along the lines of now showing 5 events for the week of November 28th or something along those lines.
Yeah, let me chime in on one other thing about the list, and from not from an accessibility standpoint really, but from a developer's standpoint, a coding quality and maintenance standpoint, and just obviously if any of our audience are programmers, when you write code, the best code is the least amount of code that you can write to get the job done. And so since we were providing list views of days with events, list views of days of the week, doing the calendar of the month itself as a list meant that there was just less code to write. It was just simply using CSS to render the changing lists differently. And so you'll have your month, you have all the list items for that month. Then when you switch to week view, it just knows that, well, we're going to just change, like hide the ones that are irrelevant, but they're still there from the month, right? So you're just continually, changing CSS classes and things like that to simply display the relevant information for what the user's requesting at the time. And you're not regenerating new markup to present a different view.
Great. Anything else you want to say about the calendar? I'm going to move to the next slide. If not, we'll do the demos at the end. All right, yeah. Great. We'll do demos later on just to keep it streamlined. Now we're gonna get. So
this was just an example also of how Wale mentioned earlier, dealing with different devices, different screen sizes, and so forth. Again, if we have some web developers on the line, you're well aware it's been a long time practice now of 10 years or more to do responsive design that your CSS actually changes the way things look depending on your screen size, so you get a good presentation that's understandable, even if there isn't a lot of real estate to play with.
Great. And then we actually did get a quick question about the calendar that maybe you might be able to answer.
Okay.
And
I'm
while
checking
you check on it, we'll just repeat to folks, this is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording and slide deck with attendees afterwards. So if you do need to go, we understand, and just to know, we can send you a recording.
Okay, so I'm going to read out loud the question. It says you may have said this at the beginning. If you wouldn't mind repeating about the calendar. Developers created this via HTML and CSS. Yes, that's true. JavaScript as well. It's almost impossible to build an accessible application that's interactive without some JavaScript. To toggle different ARIA values and CSS classes and so forth. And thinking about third-party plugins, are there any preferred platforms? I myself do not have great experience with that, and particularly not those two, but we were asked to do this because in the case of using a plugin or a framework, a JavaScript framework, or some other set of libraries for a calendar, they were trying to kind of shoehorn these calendars into some old web pages that are kind of brittle at this point because there's too many overlapping frameworks that have been used. They're going through a sort of a reworking of many things, but in order to use a plugin, they felt that they were gonna it was gonna be harder than simply having something that's just plain JavaScript and HTML. So the back and forth really of working with Wale. You know, we didn't mention this here, but Wale has said, you know, to have people with disabilities as part of your process of building things constantly there. I mean, we would literally be on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and I would be editing code and publishing it to a development server that they were able to access. And I'm in Brooklyn, they're in Manhattan, but we're all on the call together and making, you know, a change to satisfy a requirement. And Wale and Arthur would be listening on screen readers and saying, well, this doesn't make sense, this flows wrong, I don't understand it, and we'd be able to iterate very quickly and publish a fix, you know, in a matter of minutes, and continually, you know, repeat that process to refine the product.
Yeah, and we do have more questions, but we want to save them till the end. I just thought we could quickly answer this one since it was about calendars and we were talking about calendars. So we'll, you know, if you do have questions, just wait until the end, if possible, just so we can get the run of show out of the way and do a demo for you guys, and then we can take questions. Yeah, so as I said before, there will be a recording, and yeah, let's go back to the slides and continue.
Yeah, the one question that is there is something that we should definitely make sure we respond to, because that goes to some of the this stuff we've talked about like when values change based on, you know, how the DOM works and why do things one way versus another way. It has to do really with a DOM event firing that changes input when the user hasn't really decided to change the input yet. So let me answer this one real quick.
Okay.
So the view by month button, if you press it, and we'll show a live version of this later, you then do get radio buttons to choose between the three views. Originally, we had used the select box, but to keyboard navigate a select box, you actually end up triggering a change event as you step through the choices. And so, you know, that's just too much action. So radio buttons are presented when the user presents the view by month button. That view by month is essentially announcing the current choice of a set of three choices.
Right. So what was happening is, as a keyboard user, I would open the combo box and try to cycle between the options, but it would immediately just change the view to the first option I navigated to. And that causes like a load, and then I'm out of the box, right, the combo box. And so it just was confusing and annoying for folks trying to manipulate it with a screen reader. Another thing also about third parties and plugins and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of advocacy to be done in this field. We find that a lot of third-party tools just are not accessible. We'll cover that later on in a different slide, but I just wanted to put that out there since you asked about third parties.
I also just wanted to mention for folks that the image on this slide did change, showing the mobile view, which Tim talked about, and that was what prompted him to talk about the responsive.
Great. Peter, do you want to, is there a difference, or that's just, it's smaller? Or
It's a very small difference. It's more of a mobile view, like was stated. And then there are certain days that are highlighted and certain days that are not.
Right. And so in the full grid month view, you actually get like a snapshot of some event names and so forth that you can see and read. Whereas in the mobile view, you just get like a highlighted day, as Peter said, to indicate that there's something there to enter into and get more information from.
all right, now let's get to the heart of the matter. And our next slide is maps and data visualizations, A11Y. And if you're not familiar, A11Y is the hashtag for digital accessibility. We wanted to make the slide title a little bit shorter because accessibility has so many letters in it. Peter, you want to describe the image on the slide?
Yes, this is Peter speaking. On this slide, you have 4 images grouped over a red background. One is a map, one is a pie chart, one is a bar graph, and one is a line graph.
Thank you, Peter. And we were instructed by the ASL interpreters to say our names when we speak. I will be doing that. I've been bad. I'm sorry. All right, so we're going to start with some basic recommendations first. First, actually, no, we're going to define the problem. So when we're looking at maps and data visualizations, what is the exact problem that we're trying to solve? And then basic recommendations for non-interactive maps. So maybe like a static images that are maps or graphs that are maps. And then advanced recommendations for interactive maps. So maps that are, you can interact with in some way. You can search for a location. Same with data visualizations. You could view different types of data, right? And somebody asked, what is the code base available for the calendar? I believe it is. So we can share that, the GitHub for that. If you could just drop it in the chat, and we can include it also in a follow-up email.
I'll drop it in the chat now, but I'm going to make some caveats later when I talk.
All right.
but
it's not a complete product for sure.
It's not complete, but it's good. And there's the pictures that you've seen are my code base after it was handed to one of our designers who's much better at CSS and graphic design. And so the code base will produce a very plain vanilla looking version of this. I am hoping to get back together. This has sort of been backburnered for a couple of months now, but I want to get back together with that designer and incorporate his CSS into the repo. That's yet to come. But sure, I'm willing to share that. And I'm Tim Keen on GitHub. You'll find it there. I'll get a link and paste it in the chat as well.
All righty. All right. So defining the problem, when it comes to maps, what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? What is the information that the map is conveying? So is it a list of locations that's on the map, right? Is it defining various zones, like a hurricane evacuation zone, for instance, geographically? showing areas of high or low concentration of, crime or something else, right? And then, what we know maps are for generally, right? Which is getting directions, right? Submitting feedback. So DOT has a lot of feedback maps where you can, Department of Transportation has a lot of maps where you can submit feedback about streets and sidewalks, right? Defining the problem for data visualizations, right? What information is being conveyed again, right? Is it a pie chart that is split up into different pieces with percentages for each one? A line graph showing a trend over time. Bar graphs comparing different indicators, right? So these are things, right, that can help you then figure out what to include when you describe your images. So for basic recommendations, and can you describe this, Peter? Sorry. Basic recommendation slide.
Yes, it's just an array of graphs and charts grouped together over a light blue background. The charts are over a dark blue background. You'll see, just to name a few, you'll have a bar graph, pie chart, and flow chart.
Great. So this section, we're going to talk about basic recommendations. So for stuff that is more static, so for instance, if you have a map in a PDF, or you have a static map on your website, that's just static, right? Same with data, right? Or an image of a graph, or an image of a line graph, or a bar chart, or a pie chart, or any of that. So things that are more static that you don't interact with. All right, so the basics, maps.
Okay, I'm going to describe the image. This is Peter speaking. It's an image of population distribution within California. There are 5 different colors on the chart, ranging from pale yellow to dark red, indicating intensity.
Great. So those are things that you would also want to include in your alt text, is some of the things that Peter said, right? So include the following in your alt text, right? What's the title of the map, if it has one? What is it generally conveying? Is it a specific geographic area like New York City or United States? What are the takeaways, right? So as an example for heat maps, where are the highest concentrations or the lowest concentrations, right? And if the map is highlighting and if somebody can mute, please. If the map is highlighting like a specific area, let's say we have this a lot for our projects on Department of Transportation, give the coordinates, right? This is highlighting 43rd Street from 5th Avenue to 3rd Avenue, right? Or something along those lines. So just give folks that information that you would be able to get by looking at the map, or you would be looking for on that map. If the map is conveying multiple locations, such as maybe all of the shelters in a specific borough or neighborhood, right? Give the number, right? This is a map of that location, the neighborhood. It has X amount of shelters, and if they happen to be concentrated in one area, mention that, right? So there's a concentration of shelters in this specific neighborhood, and so on and so forth. For visual accessibility considerations, use accessible fonts. So it's sans serif, Arial, Verdana, Tahoma. Your text should have a 4.5 to 1 color contrast ratio against this color contrast ratio, not radio. And include a link. Always include a link to download the full data set as an accessible spreadsheet. The basics for graphs and charts, Peter.
Yes, on this slide, you'll see an image of a simple pie chart that displays methods of transportation. Yellow for walking, which is 10%, green for bus, which is 40%, blue for car, which is 25%, and red for bike, which is also 25%.
So this is a great example of how to what to put in the alt text for a pie chart of this nature, right? So what is the title again? What data is it generally conveying, right? This is modes of transportation. In terms of a graph or a bar graph or a line graph, right? What is the trend? Is it steadily rising? Is it steadily declining? Is it stable? Does it have a bell curve, right? All of these things can help you write a concise and useful alt text. What are some key takeaways? What's the highest value? What's the lowest value? What's the middle value, right? And then once again, use accessible sans serif fonts. Have that 4.5 to 1 color contrast ratio. Your colors should be able to also just clear and distinct from one another in the bar chart or the pie chart, I mean. And then once again, include the data, a link to download the data as a spreadsheet. All right, so advanced recommendations, Peter.
Yes, on this slide, you have an interactive map that displays New York City crime map that allows you to view crime by precinct, aggregated location, and as a heat map for 7 major felonies.
All right, so I will ask folks we will be answering questions as much as possible at the end. Feel free to send your questions, but we will not be answering them until the end. All right, so we're going to be talking about now interactive maps, right, and data visualizations and some of our recommendations. All right, so this is going to be combined for both. When it comes to, interactive, right, I spoke about creating those user journeys for the different types of users. So I've broken it up into 4 slides here. Those are just users that we've come up with. These are not necessarily the end all be all, just kind of trying to show you the process that we have come up with, the people that we consider and how we consider them. So for screen reader users, which are generally blind folks, text alternatives for images, right? I mentioned this before. For maps, right? If it's a list of locations, having it, the information available as a list that is indexed by headings and has filters that are accessible so that users can filter the information. HTML tables, a lot of data fits in perfectly into HTML tables, depending on what that data is, but generally speaking, our first approach for representing data is by using a table. Making sure your filter and your search search controls are accessible and have keyboard access and have labels, right? And then ARIA Live and status announcements. So making sure that if there's dynamic content or if the screen changes, that information is summarized to screen reader users in some way. So for our calendar, when the screen changes, right, we give information to the user, about what has changed or what is now visible. So it'll say showing 5 events for the week of November 28th, right? And so those are some examples of that. Next slide.
Did we get a description of the image on this page? I don't know if we did.
Yeah, we missed it. I think it was just what was the last one? The screen reader one?
Hi, this is Peter. It's just an image of a blind man using a computer or screen reader.
And here, this one is a keyboard icon, right? This
next slide, there are 2 pictures. Yes, there is a picture of hands using a keyboard, and then there's another picture of someone with a mobility disability using a sip and puff assistive technology device to access the computer.
All right, so for keyboard users, right? And a lot of this also helps screen reader users as well. So making sure that your navigational elements, filters, and other controls, right, are in the keyboard tab order, and they're in a logical order as well. And then everything that has keyboard access should also have a good visual focus so that users can figure out where they are, where the keyboard focus is at all times. Persistent on-screen controls for the map as an alternative for gestures. So zoom in, zoom out, panning, right? And then once again, proper focus shifting of keyboard focus for dynamic content. So if you have a modal that pops up, you need to have built-in mechanisms that will, throw keyboard focus there, right? So that folks who are using keyboards or screen readers are taken to the right place and they're not left stranded behind. Next slide, visual design. So here are some considerations for that. Is there an image here?
Yes, there is. It is a image of different graphic design tools, including Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. It's a CorelDRAW and Flash.
Corel, I think, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. No worries. And so, yeah, for visual design, right, you want to keep in mind a lot of the things that we have been mentioning over and over again, right? Sans serif fonts. And some examples are Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, Helvetica, but there's many other fonts in the sans serif family. Support for text resizing, reflow, and different screen sizes. So you want to be able to want to make sure that users can enlarge the content to 200% and 400% without losing the content, right? At 400%, you are allowed to still have scrolling in both directions for maps and data visualizations. So do keep that in mind, because most other web pages at 400%, it's supposed to fit into one column. So high color contrast, once again, 4.5 to 1 is the color contrast ratio that we recommend. Building also just borders, right, for different clear borders or barriers, right, to distinguish different parts of the map from one another. Don't rely on color alone, right? That is very important. And clearly defined map borders, I said that. And then we actually have built this into one or a few of our maps, being able to adjust opacity and transparency so that users can kind of just adjust it to the level that is most comfortable to them. Formatting is this one, and Peter?
There's an image on the screen. It's a screenshot image of a Word document with the paragraph styles pane open to apply a style to some text.
Great, thank you. And this is Wally again. I've been forgetting to say my name because I'm terrible. So the reason we use this image is actually creating an accessible website is actually a lot like creating an accessible Word document. Formatting is really, really important. You can make something look like a heading or a button or a link, but functionally they are not headings or buttons or links because they don't have the proper tags or attributes. So this is just important for web accessibility in general, using proper tags, right? And as much as possible using standard HTML, and for customizing elements, using the proper definitions for name, role, value, state, property, and those kinds of things. Proper states for dynamic elements. So, when it comes to maps and data visualizations, you might have accordions, right? And if you do have accordions, then you might want to use ARIA expanded, true or false, right? If there's modals that pop up, right, shifting focus, but also toggle buttons, right? Their states are pressed or not pressed, or selected, ARIA selected for selectable things like tabs, role equal tabs, right? It's good to know what elements are, what tools are available to make things accessible that you created. Also, I want to say, you know, sometimes you don't need to go with the most complex things. For selectable items, you can use checkboxes, right? You can use radio buttons. You don't necessarily always have to create a button that is selectable and use the ARIA selected attribute, or toggle buttons, right? They have very specific uses. So for instance, toggle buttons, I would use for something that you switch on or off, like maybe a setting, right? Dark mode or light mode or something of that nature. Or, you know, whereas ARIA selected, I might use that in a tab group, right? So if there's different tabs and you can select one of those tabs, you can use ARIA selected for that. What's the gold? That's a wonderful question. What's the gold standard for an accessible map is a question that we got. And I will be answering that a little bit later. You might not get the answer that you want. The short answer is accessibility is kind of still in its infancy stages when it comes to maps and data visualizations. We have examples of things that work, you know, different components that work. I have not necessarily so right, so yeah, proper states, and that was it for that one. So I just want to move on to the last. Oh no. All right, so actually that was my next slide. So somebody had commented on what is the gold standard, right? So this slide title is Data Visualizations A11Y. And so we want to sort of just to let you know where we're at and what our experience has been like. So there are a lot of vendors out there that are doing amazing work to try to make their products accessible. From our experience, when it comes to data visualizations and maps, accessibility is still very much in its infancy stages. And, you know, we have worked with vendors before and found that we've ended up having to recreate that work separately somewhere else to make it accessible. There have been improvements and they are getting better. We worked on our COVID data, which is using a product called Data Wrapper. And, you know, we as customers, and we encourage you as customers to use your power to advocate for better accessibility. So we've done that with Data Wrapper, and we continue to do that with vendors like Tableau and Esri by just demanding access and letting them know what we need, right? And the more educated you are, the better chance you have of knowing what to tell these folks or what questions to ask them. So some things that I recommend when you are talking to a vendor is to ask them questions, the probing questions, not just are you WCAG compliant, because of course they're going to say yes, right? And have their lawyers rationalize their answer. But some things you can ask is, you know, can you show me a demo of a screen reader experience of your product? Do you have an accessibility team? How many people are on your accessibility team, right? Are there people with disabilities on your accessibility team? These are things that you can ask to try to probe. And if the answer is, we'll get back to you on that, the answer is no, right? So it's pretty telling. That being said, right, I think the more important one is having demos, right, of different things like screen reader access or keyboard access. And thank you, Arthur, for sharing that answer by John Kirkwood. Somebody asked, are there standards specifically for maps and accessibility? So Arthur said, repeated an answer from John Kirkwood. Can you just say it out loud, or somebody?
Yeah, so John says, no standards exist. By the way, this is Arthur. No standards exist which describe how to make a visual map accessible to people with vision disabilities. But here is the W3C WCAG page on this, and there's a URL there from the w3.org website.
Great. Next slide.
Great, and this is Peter. There's an image on this slide before we move forward.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it's a screenshot of a table that shows COVID-19 data for positive cases, total cases, hospitalizations, and confirmed deaths. It compares summary data for the last 7 days to the last 28 days.
Great. And we have some time, so hopefully we'll get to demo that specific data visualization for y'all with a screen reader soon. We're actually nearing the end of our slide deck, so we will get to do the demo and take questions soon. And we just want to finish off by letting you know the most important part is getting people with disabilities involved, getting people with disabilities to test your products. So this slide is called testing. And is there an image, Peter?
Yes, there is a picture of a woman in a wheelchair using a computer.
Awesome, right? So it's really important to not just learn how to use assistive technology and test yourself, but actually have the people that are using these products, right, regularly involved as much as possible. And this is something that we are, we are sort of as much as possible trying to get better and better at this. As we have myself and Arthur that represent folks who are blind with and have low vision on for the city, but we are also trying to connect more with the disability community and find some opportunities to include people with disabilities in research and studies and testing, right, more often. So hopefully in the future we've been advocating, and hopefully we will have some success with that. But yeah, so next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Tim. First, Peter's going to describe the image very briefly, and then Tim is going to talk about testing continuously and throughout.
The picture is an agile development cycle. You'll see around the cycle, around the word agile, there are the words define value, prioritize backlog, enable collaboration, collect analytics, respond to change, continuously improve, create workflow, and repeat.
All right, Tim.
Okay, this is Tim again. So I mean, I've been writing software for a long time, although never had any particular formal training in software or in maps. Really, I'm a biologist and environmental scientist. But to me, Agile is really the scientific method. But for software and collaborative development, and to me, it's the key to good software. And the Agile Manifesto has 4 key principles that that define the process, and that is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, basically meeting people and what they do are why we're doing this. So we don't force ourselves into arbitrary processes and tools. We do things for the people that we're doing them for. Unfortunately, when you work for government, this is sometimes not the case, and we can get into that a little bit more later. But then working software over comprehensive documentation. It's better to start building stuff with your users and have quick iterations and see if you're hitting the target or if you need to adjust, rather than spend a lot of time up front deciding exactly what you're going to do and writing it all down and then handing it off to somebody. Because in the real world today, what you want to do is really likely to change before you're even finished writing that document. So just start working and document your software as you go. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So again, this means the people that you're building things for, you're working with them on a regular basis, on a daily basis, if possible. And responding to change over following the plan. Again, you build the plan and try to execute it, but before you're done executing the plan, the whole point of what you're doing is changing. So you want to be responsive to change, and this is and the agile processes allow you to do this. And it really does mean, having your users, and in this case, a user group that has unique requirements over others is the disability community and the need for accessible technologies. So I've, as a developer who's been building mapping applications for, I don't know, more than 20 years, back 20 years ago, it wasn't even considered. Right. Well, a blind person's not even going to look at a map. What difference does it make? That was sort of an attitude. But then it kind of evolved to, well, yeah, there's information there that's important to them, but they don't need the map. So let's just make another page that has the information on it. And that was an approach for a while. And when I started working with Wale, I began to realize not just the benefit to because that approach really, you end up with diverging, if you're doing a separate page for screen readers, you sort of end up with a diverging set of requirements, and ultimately you're going to end up doing more work than if you start building in those accessible features at the beginning. You're going to have one solution that meets both your ordinary sighted audience and your screen reader audience, and can do the job for both. You have less code to maintain, and you don't have this sort of othering of the disability community, that they have this other thing and you have this other thing for other people. So it kind of it fosters the improvement of these technologies and of people's understandings of them. And to me, that's been the most interesting thing about working with Wale and Arthur over the past few years, is how much it's taught me, not just about how blind people navigate the world and navigate the web, but also how to structure applications in a meaningful way, that I'm always looking for a way to do less. Right. I mean, programmers are supposed to do as little as possible, but solve a problem. And so trying to combine the two and do it up front is key, and iterating, constant feedback. It's easy to break software if you don't have testing. And this is one of the caveats I was going to say about the calendar. In most of my repositories, you'll see a lot of unit tests. The calendar, given the time frame we were in and doing this back and forth, we were doing a lot of actual visual and screen reader testing, and there's unit tests that need to be written. Testing interactively is good, and testing with automation is equally important, because you need to sort of lock in the requirements with a test that's automated, so that when you go to change something, you're not breaking some key requirement for accessibility. You've got a test, an automated test that proves it, especially as Wale said, it's Wale and Arthur for all of New York City, and there's a lot of web pages in New York City. They can't be testing every single one. So developer written unit tests, automation, incredibly important. And collaboration is key. So we can go on from there, I think, Wale, unless you have something more you wanted me to talk about on this one.
No, we are good. I just need permission to share screen so I can start some demos for y'all. Hopefully the internet and my technology cooperates and doesn't decide to bug out while we are trying to share these experiences with y'all. But if it doesn't work, we're also sharing the experience of inaccessibility, right? Which is what we have all the time. There's no shortage of inaccessible experiences.
Yeah, well, I can't even, to me, accessible experiences are bizarre too. When, like, the screen reader, as a sighted person, I work with Wale, and sometimes he'll have a screen reader on so I can listen to it at the same time. And it amazes me that he can absorb information as it's coming in like that. It's amazing.
Lift slower, slower.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll notice sometimes I do get distracted while I'm presenting, but that's because messages were coming in, and I was hearing a question
Participants
or
can now see
whatever.
your
Yeah,
application.
your slides are colliding with the chat, right?
Yeah, basically. And that's why we turned off the chat for all participants so that all these
Right.
messages wouldn't bombard other blind users who are just trying to listen
One of
to
the other
us.
points, though, I wanted to make, if I could, real quick, while about
Sure.
testing, is that when it comes to testing for screen readers, the only way to do a lot of it is with interactive testing, and at this point, and you do have to sort of find the lowest common denominator, because you've got narrator for Windows, voiceover for Mac, JAWS, NVDA. You've got a lot of different.
You have to draw a line
options.
somewhere. Absolutely.
There's a lot of different options out there, and so you got to test the popular ones and find the right combination of ARIA stuff that's supported on all the platforms in the same way, and that's not always an easy task in and of itself.
Absolutely. We use the WebAIM survey data every year, I think, or 2 years. The WebAIM does a screen reader survey. And so we use that data to prioritize. So generally, the top 2 screen readers are JAWS and NVDA, or have been. And the top 2 browsers are Firefox and Chrome. So, my first mode of testing is with JAWS and Chrome. But as we, build the product and I want to make sure all of the features work, I'll go back. I'll test with Firefox as well. I'll test with NVDA on both browsers, and then I'll test on iOS with VoiceOver and Mac with VoiceOver. So that's what we generally cover in terms of our own testing for screen readers, of course.
Right.
So.
Who we are with
All
Google
right,
Chrome.
so I just want to confirm that we have visuals and audio
Windows up arrow.
being shared with us, or with you, because I am.
Mute.
I'm
Currently
sharing.
unmuted. Alt. Who we are with Google Chrome. To move to an item, press the arrow keys. Who we are with Google Chrome. Slower. Slower.
I'll take the radio silence as yes, right?
COVID-19 alert level.
All right. So Peter, can you just give us a quick run? What are we looking at here?
So you are on a website. The title of the website or the header is Information Technology and Telecommunications NYC, and it's a calendar of events from December 2021. It is the image from an earlier slide.
Great. Cool. So this is a test page. This is not live. So this is the calendar that we told you so much about, and now we're going to just demo it. So first I want to just show you keyboard access and what's there for keyboard users. So I'm going to just tab.
COVID-19 alert levels and Nick link. Get the latest Nick link graphic.
And these are just some header navigation links. So we're just going to keep going until we get to the calendar.
Search banner read translate as text navigate about link. Initial business career about do it link main news and reports contact COVID-19.
All right.
Learn more about digital calendar.
I think I might have skipped it. All right.
Previous month button heading. Previous month button to
there
activate.
We go. I guess I was already had skipped it. So all right. So we have, if we want to go to a previous month or next month, right?
Next month button to date time edit 20211210 month edit spin box 12.
The date picker, which I mentioned before, Tim mentioned before, we're still having some issues with that on desktop because as soon as you change one of the values, it refreshes the whole screen, which if you're just trying to input a very specific date, it makes it a lot harder.
Who we are with Google Chrome, main region, date time edit. Here edit spin box 2021 to set the value.
My JAWS is now speeding up for some reason.
Slower. Show date picker button menu. Press.
All right.
Find events by name. Begin typing, then press down arrow to access search results. Edit combo collapsed. Find events by name ... to set the.
So we have a search field here.
Showing month view button collapsed. To activate, press enter.
And then we have the view, so I can change it from month to week to day view. And
showing
now
27 scheduled events heading level 2.
right? And the first item here showing, right, how many events? 20 scheduled events, right? Or is it 27?
Heading level 2 showing 27 scheduled.
27. So
List with 22 items. Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. 1 event scheduled. Heading level 3. Same page. Link visited.
okay, so here we have what we talked about before, which is every day is in the keyboard tab order, and it has a H3. We skip the days that don't have any events. So so that's just to clean up that experience more for folks who are using a keyboard or a screen reader. So let's go navigate some more and see what other days have events.
Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. 1 event scheduled. Heading level 3. Same page. Link.
So let's try to view a day with multiple events. So I know ahead of time that December 10th does. So
10. Friday, December 10th, 2021. 5 events scheduled. Heading level 3. Same
Okay.
page. Link visited.
So I'm just tabbing to it, and now I'm going to press enter, and we'll see what happens.
Enter. Showing 5 scheduled events on Friday, December 10th, 2021. Heading level 2. From
Right.
Imani McKinnon to all panelists. I'm sorry about that, but I have to go now.
Alrighty. So you're hearing this text, but I believe it's not there visually. So this is just a decision that our designer made when working on this. We don't necessarily, say that you should have it like this. But it's a decision for you to make as a designer. Do you want that text to appear for everyone, to let everyone know how many events are showing, or do you want it just there for screen reader users?
And also St.
Yeah.
Patrick's Day clearly isn't on December 10th.
Oh yes, these are dud events, right? This is not a real calendar. All right, so we have the events on that day. So beyond that, we don't actually, you cannot open the events. So the keyboard access just takes us to
list with 1 items. Return to month view. Same
right,
page. Link
return to
visited.
month view.
It's not that you can't. It's not that
Oh,
you
you
can't
can, yeah.
open them per se. It's that there's nothing to open. It's all
Right.
there.
I mean, yeah, like there isn't any more information than what is already on the screen. So if I was a screen reader user, I can now navigate by by line.
Visited. Heading level 3. Same page. Link. Friday, December 10th, 2021. 5 events scheduled. Heading level 4. 1. Heading level 4. St. Patrick's Day Parade. Start 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Event details go here. 6. Heading level 4. 2.
Right. So so I have access to it in that way. I want to just quickly go back and show what the screen reader experience is like from the beginning.
Event.
So if we
Friday,
went back,
December 10th, 2021. Visited. Heading level 3. Same page. Link. Friday. Content info region. Directory of
go back.
return to month view.
Return to
Center.
month
Visited.
view.
Same page. Link. Return to month view. Showing 27 scheduled events.
All right. So once again, it drops our focus in the beginning of the list and lets us know how many events there are. So now let's go through the heading structure. I'm going to start at the top.
Who we are.
All right. We got our heading 1.
Calendar of events.
Which
Heading level
is
1.
calendar of events. Now that is the page itself. So that's not part of the calendar. That's just the page we embedded the calendar onto. The first heading in the calendar is an H2.
December 2021. Heading level 2.
Right. And it tells you what month you're on. The next heading is another H2, which is the beginning of the list. So if you wanted to skip the filters.
Showing 27 scheduled events. Heading level 2.
Right. I've just pressed H. And I forgot to say I'm using JAWS with Chrome. So those are heading 2s. Now each day is a heading level 3. So if I just wanted to navigate the days, I can navigate by heading 3s.
Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. 1 event scheduled. Visited. Heading level 3. Same page. Link.
Right. So let's go back to December 10th because it has multiple events.
Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, December 8th, Thursday, December 9th, Friday, December 10th, 2021. 5 events scheduled. Visited. Heading level 3.
Right,
Same
press
page. Link.
enter on that.
Enter. List with 22 items. Showing 5 scheduled events on Friday, December 10th, 2021. Heading level 2. Showing 5 scheduled events on Friday.
Now I know we saw this before, but I wanted to just highlight that now each event is an H4.
Friday, December 10th, 2021. 5 events scheduled. Heading level 3. 1. St. Patrick's Day Parade. Heading level 4. 2. Nick Marathon. Heading level 4. 3. Milk and Cookies. Heading level 4.
Right. And so I can now press down arrow to read Milk and Cookies.
Heading level 4. Milk and Cookies. Start 8 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Event details go here. 8. Heading level 4. 4.
Right. And so that is the heading structure that we have built. Let's go now back to the calendar of the month view.
Showing 5 list with 1 items. Return to month view. Same enter. Visited. Same page. Link. Return to month view. Showing 27 scheduled events.
All right. Now I wanted to change the view, right? So
Showing
let's
month view
tab
button collapsed to
backwards.
activate. Press enter.
So it says showing month view. I'm going to press
Enter.
enter.
View by month button expanded to activate. Press enter.
And then if I,
Showing 27 scheduled
oops,
event.
I think I did that wrong.
Showing month view button collapsed to
One
activate.
more
Enter.
time.
View by month radio button checked. 1
And
of
then
3.
down arrow to choose week.
View by week radio button
then
not
enter.
checked. 2 of enter. To change the selection, press up or down arrow. View by week radio button not enter. Showing 9 scheduled events for week of Sunday, December 5th, 2021 button collapsed to activate. Press enter.
Until this, the statement has changed, right?
From Martha
Showing
Jellens to all panelists. So sorry, must check.
um,
Find virtual PC showing 9 scheduled
9
events for week
scheduled
of Sunday,
events for the
December
week of
5th.
Sunday, December 5th, right? And so it's telling us what view we're in, how many events, and the date, right?
List of
That
4
is
items.
associated with. So let's now go back to month view again and now use the search field.
List with 4 items. Return to month view. Enter. Visited same page link. Return to month view. Showing 20.
It's in the tab order, but since I already know, I'm going to press E to get to
Search edit. Date time edit. 12/10. Find events by
find
name.
events by
Begin
name.
typing.
We
Enter.
saw something
Find.
about milk and cookies, so let's just search for that. So I'm going to write
CXO.
COOK.
Okay. Found 1 events matching who. Found 1 events matching cook.
And you see the ARIA live there. So it could be better in terms of it. It didn't say the most recent one first. It said found events matching COO, and then it said found events matching cook. That's something we can streamline a little bit more. But we know how many results we have. I could press down arrow.
Cook. List with 1 items. Milk and cookies. 1 of 1.
Milk and
To move to
cookies
an item, press
sounds
the
good.
arrow
I'm going to
keys.
press enter.
Enter. Showing details for milk and cookies and 4 other scheduled events on Friday, December 10th, 2021.
Right. So the thing that I would recommend here is it's showing the events in order. So if I do go to the first heading,
Calendar of events heading level
it's
1.
gonna be-
Showing 5 scheduled events on Friday, December 10th, 2021. Heading level 2. Friday, December 10th. Heading level 4-1.
which is
Heading level 4 St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day parade. So this is something that we should probably refine when we search for an event. Probably we should hide all the other events on that day so that it's the first one that the user gets to. Otherwise, I have
Nick Marathon
to
heading level 4.
navigate to that heading, right?
3. 4. Story time
Which
heading
is
3. Milk and cookies heading level 4.
So that's a little bit about our calendar. Let me go to like the next month, right?
Calendar of events
And
heading.
it's going to give us an error message because there's no events on that month, right? But if you did
Previous day
pick a
button.
date that had no events in it, it would give you this message. So
Next day button to activate.
actually,
Press
let's go
enter.
back to month view.
12 date time edit.
Oops.
PC cursor. ASL more options for ASL interpreter sign Nexus create title is participant 65.
Oops. All right.
To move to an item, press the arrow keys. Meeting controls. To move to an item, press the arrow. Who we are, do it Google Chrome. To move to an
All
item,
right.
press
Just started reading stuff from the Zoom window. for
slash
some
date time
reason.
edit.
All right.
Escape.
All
Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. 1 event scheduled. Virtual PC cursor. Heading level 4 event 1 with a long name.
right. So let's
Show-
go back.
Showing month view button collapsed to
Oh, it
activate.
is
Press
on
enter.
month view. Okay. That's
Your,
weird.
your JAWS
December
is really
2021.
speeded up.
Is it? Okay.
Slower.
All right. So now we could go to
Next month
next
button
month
to activate.
and
Press enter.
there shouldn't be, or hopefully there aren't any
Enter.
events
Showing
there.
10 scheduled
Oh, there
events button.
are.
Next month to activate. Press enter. January 2022.
Okay, I'm pretty sure February doesn't, right?
01 date time. Next month button.
Try one more time.
Enter. Showing 11 scheduled events heading level 2. February 2022.
All
Showing
right.
month heading level 2. Showing 11 scheduled events. List of 11 items.
Do you know if March has an event?
Showing
Maybe
11
it
scheduled
doesn't.
events.
I don't
heading
remember
button.
about the sample data, but just, yeah, tab a couple more times through
Yeah.
the months. You'll
Showing
find
month
it.
view button collapsed. Date time edit. Next month
Okay,
button.
next month.
Enter. Okay, no events
There we
scheduled
go.
after Tuesday, February 15th, 2022.
Right, no events scheduled after this,
Okay button
this,
to activate, press
this date, and it says the OK button's
No
there.
event,
right?
okay
So-
button, space.
So
We are
that is our calendar. And yeah, so we hope that you
3:40 p.m.
enjoyed that. And we have 2 more demos for you. So if you have a question, feel free to drop it, but I'm just going to move on to the next item.
Survey pedestrian ramp program. Link every.
Let's check out the COVID data since
COVID-19
we
latest data.
looked at that very recently when we're talking about vendors. And so this is using data wrapper, and we've had to do a little bit of finagling as well to get the information to show up as an HTML table. So this is our latest COVID-19 data.
Faster.
Oops, I know we want slower.
Slower.
All right, so
No prior heading. COVID-19 data heading level 1.
COVID-19 data, right? That's an H1.
Latest data heading level 1.
Latest data and H2. All right,
Heading level
another
2 data
H1.
update schedule. Our COVID-19 data is updated on these pages as follows. List of
All
free
right, so
items.
there's information there.
Bullet daily data. Bullet list. Heading level 2 key data.
Key data,
The data we are monitoring closely includes.
right? So there's more.
Summary heading level
Here's
3.
the summary, right? So here's what we need to know.
This table compares summary data for the last 7 days to the last 28 days.
Okay, so there is an issue here where it's kind of reading out multiple column and row numbers. So that's something I definitely inform folks at Health about. This was not happening before. So these things do change, but
Table with 4 columns and 6 rows. Table with 4 columns and 5 rows. Currently displaying rows 1.
so it's saying conflicting information here. So definitely this is something you don't want to have. So let me try to show that to you again, right?
Table with 4. Recent trends button collapsed. Table with 4 columns and 6 rows. Table with 4 columns and 5 rows. Currently displaying rows 1 to 5. Column 1.
Right.
Row
So
1.
it's saying that it has different amounts of rows, even though it's just one table.
Percent positive. Percent of people tested who test positive. Row 2.
Okay, so percent positive, I'm just going down the column here, percent of people tested positive. If I go to the right, we do have proper column headers. So
Last 7 days daily average 9.30%.
right,
Column 2.
so percent positive, 9.30%. Last
Last 28 days daily average 9.45%. Column 3.
28 days, 9 point, right?
Trend
So
stable. Column 4.
and then
Last trend
trend
stable.
is
Column 4.
stable here, right? So
End of row.
and then
Last 7 measure. Total cases confirmed and probable cases. Row 3.
so total cases confirmed and probable cases.
Last 7 days daily average 4,093. Column 2.
4,093 in the last 7 days, and
Last 28 days daily average 3,365. Column 3.
3,365 in the last 28 days.
Trend increasing. Column 4.
And the trend is increasing, right? So all this data is here, and it's it's in an accessible format for a screen reader user as a table.
Last 7
and
days
I also
daily,
wanted to say that there's also row headers. So if I go up to the row above, it will read the row header.
Percent positive. Percent of people tested who test positive 9.45%. Row
Right,
2.
percent positive, people who test positive 9.4%, and that's for the column of I think
Last 28 days daily average 9.45%. Column 3.
So that's
Period.
our COVID-19 data as HTML tables. It's not perfect, but it's definitely getting on its way there to be a more accessible product for everyone, hopefully. And so last thing,
Survey pedestrian ramp.
pedestrian ramp survey. This is a Department of Transportation product.
Windows up arrow.
And it shows you information about which pedestrian ramps have been surveyed. Those are curb cuts. So they are inspected for quality, and so that and that data is made available so that New Yorkers can just know, right? It's important for folks that use wheelchairs for their advocacy to know where there are good curb cuts for them to take and where there are bad curb cuts that they should avoid. So if I was interested in my neighborhood or a specific intersection, I can actually look that up here. So we have the visual map that maybe Peter can describe. Or do I need to scroll down a bit?
Windows up arrow. Blank.
Right on Spring Street Northwest.
Am I not on mute? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. I was on mute for a second. Could you scroll down? Because I can only see part of the map.
Page down. Data sets the data extracted from LeadDAR.
Wow.
Pending technical review icon. Large yellow. Pending technical review icon. Page down. 1087419.
More?
Wrapping to top. Primary navigation.
Not so much.
Wrapping to bottom. Survey assessment map heading level 2.
I can describe it. It's basically a grayscale map of New York. On the screen, you'll see different cities in New York. So you'll see Valley Stream.
Name to all panelists. Do you really want the screen reader to say header level 2, or is there just no way to prevent it from saying that? Why would a blind user want to know that the header is level 2?
So somebody asked you, yeah, go ahead, sorry. You were done? You were done, right? I got distracted with a message. Yeah.
No worries. And then there's an opportunity to type and find an address or place. And there is a, in bold red lettering, it says, zoom in close to an intersection for more information.
Great. And keep in
And
mind, if you
I
do put messages in the chat now, it will be read by my screen reader for everybody. So just to keep that in mind. So somebody asked about the heading level 2s. Do you want the screen reader to say stuff like heading level 2? That, you know, I think that in their mind, they think that that's extra information and it's annoying. But that is actually what absolutely 110% we want that information to be conveyed to users, because otherwise they're not going to understand the heading structure. And this is just part of what the screen reader experience is. It's, you know, it's giving you that information. It's telling you that something is a link or a button or a heading or a checkbox or a radio box, because we don't have the visual aesthetic that you know, we can't see that visual aesthetic that conveys it to you as a sighted user.
Right, and that has that isn't really related to the way you write your web pages. That's only the way screen readers read your web pages. So it's not even up to the web developer whether or not the screen readers do that. That's the way the screen readers suck up and organize the content for the listener.
So we are not writing in heading level 2 as part of the label. It just has an H2 tag, right? So that's how it is defined as a heading level 2.
This is Arthur.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with regard to that, the reason why a person would want to know that it's a heading level 2, and this is assuming that you're using the heading levels in your code to actually indicate a semantic structure, is that so that they can follow the structure of the page, so they know that this is a, you know, second to the title level section of this page. And if it's a heading level 3, then, oh, this is a section of that, you know, a smaller section, a subsection of that one section. So you want, as you're using your headings, you want to make sure that you're not just using them for CSS, right, to make it look how you want it to look, but you're actually using it to create that semantic structure that a blind user can then use to kind of navigate and follow through that page.
Right.
Right.
So
and
also very good for cognitive disabilities as well, semantic structure.
So Wally, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Just you know, as a developer who's been writing stuff for the web for some time, you know, there was a time where that stuff didn't seem to matter to me too much, right? You might just use a div and set the CSS to make it look the way you want on the page. It looks like a heading. It's bold. It's bigger than the other text, but it's just in a div, and everything's in a div. That's, you know, divs are easy. But this is kind of where I was going earlier when I said, you know, working to do accessibility forces you to just be smarter about how you structure your code, how you structure your HTML, all of that, because in order to have the screen reader read it, you know, it has to be parsable in a logical fashion, not just a visual fashion.
It's also navigate. John Kirkwood, by the way, in the chat said it's good. Semantic heading structures is good for cognitive disabilities as well. In terms of navigation, just to use the example of the calendar, H1s, right, are generally for the page title, right? So on that page, it was calendar. And then H2 is broad sections of a page. So the month view was December, so the H2 was December. And then another H2 was the beginning of the list of, you know, days. And then each day was an H3. This helps me, right? Because if I press 3 on the row of numbers that goes across my keyboard, it'll take me to the next heading level 3. So if I wanted to just skip to see what days are available and how many events they have, I could just quickly press 3 and I get there right away. And if I'm in the day view, when I opened December 10th, I could press 4 on my row of numbers across the keyboard again, right? And to navigate by event. So I could just hear each event title and not have to read the entire event details. So it's just it's a way of making navigation faster for screen reader users as well. I want to get into this last demo, and then we can take
Invite mute me.
questions.
Invite mute me.
What time is it? I'm trying to read the time, and it says mute me.
3:51
Yeah.
p.m.
3:51.
Okay. All right. So yeah, here's a quick map on pedestrian ramps. And so let's just quickly read through it and try to find an intersection and read about the curb cuts there.
Survey data was generated from cyclomedia imagery captured between slower. Edit. Survey data was generated from cyclomedia imagery captured between March 2017 and October 2018.
All right, that's all important information.
Pending technical review with Disabilities Act ADAs. Some locations that search.
And
Some locations that have search.
there's a search here that you
Virtual.
can use, but you can also put in an intersection.
Search button. Filters table with 6 cop 155839108 Lafayette Street and Duane Street.
Okay, so
Wrapping to top. Primary navigate. Search heading level. Survey heading level 1. NYC heading level. Visited same page link. Find surveyed ramps by street intersection.
okay, so there's a link here that takes you to it.
Enter.
So I'm just
Visited
gonna use
same page
that,
link. Find surveyed ramps by
which is
street
it's
intersection.
further down the page.
Visited same page link.
I think I need to reload this page because I had it on for a long
Control
time.
R. Survey pedestrian ramp program. Visited same page link. Find surveyed ramps by street intersection. Space.
All
1
right.
trillion. The map. Location of ramps surveys all 5.
Okay, and
Just the main content.
just taking some time to load, and then through screen to focus to the top.
Primary
So
navigation heading level
one more time.
search head level 2. Second 1. Region. Same page link
Alright.
visited.
So it does have a message here, right?
Across all 5 boroughs. For an accessible version of the map, visit the visited same page link. Find surveyed ramps by
So
street
we do have
intersection.
instructions on how to get to the more accessible portion and an anchor link to get to it. So let's press enter and hope it works because it worked earlier.
Enter. Survey pedestrian ramp program. Survey pedestrian ramp program. Page has 9 regions, 8 headings, and 23 links. Group start. Find surveyed ramps
Okay,
by
great.
street intersection. Heading level 2. Find surveyed ramps by street intersection. Follow the 3 steps below to generate a map of surveyed pedestrian ramps at a traffic intersection. Accessibility help
All
button.
right,
List of 3
so
items.
we
1,
do have,
1.
I just want to show this. There's an accessibility help button.
List of 3 items.
Pops
Accessibility
out a
help button.
modal.
Enter. Survey pedestrian ramp program. Google Chrome. Accessibility help bullet. There are 3 menu items that need to be filled in to create a map of surveyed pedestrian ramps by intersection. Bullet. First, use the form to select a borough and select the next button. Bullet. Next, you will be asked to
So
type in
those
the
are the
street name and then
instructions. I
select
just
the
wanted to
next
show
button.
you that. And we're going to
Wrapping to
close.
bottom. Close dialog button. Enter.
All right, so let's
Main
let's
region.
do it. Let's find it where we are in 100 Gold Street in Manhattan. That's our office. So select a borough.
Select a borough
Manhattan,
combo.
next.
Manhattan. Next button to active. Enter. 2.
So
Type in a street name edit combo to set the value. Please add a street name. GOLD.
Gold Street,
Gold.
next.
ST. ST. Next button. Enter. 3.
All
Select
right,
the cross
so
street combo box to
now I
change
don't
the
have to type anything. It's showing me all the cross streets as a list in the combo box. So I could just press down arrow. So let's press S for
Add street.
spruce. Great. Next.
S. Spruce Street.
Or create map.
Create
All
map
right.
button to activate. Press enter. Enter.
Might take a second.
Map of Gold ST and Spruce Street in Manhattan, New York with 4 surveyed
Okay,
pedestrian
so it
ramps.
tells me
traffic.
what the map is showing now, which is the intersection of Gold and Spruce, and 4 surveyed pedestrian ramps.
List of 4 items. List of 2 items. Nesting level 1.
So marker A.
Marker A graphic.
We have them indexed here by image. If I were to go back and give feedback, or I will give feedback to the folks who built this for the future, probably we need a heading associated with each ramp, but here's the information for marker A.
Ramp ID
Gives you the ID.
99555. This ramp is used to cross Spruce Street. The image was taken on October 14, 2018. List and nesting level 1. Pedestrian ramp 99555 at the corner of Gold Street and Spruce Street in Manhattan. This ramp is used to cross Spruce Street. Image taken on October 14, 2018 button. List of 2 items. Nesting level
All right,
1.
so
Marker B
there are
graphic.
lists there, and it tells you when it was last updated. So that is our pedestrian ramp map. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and we'll take any
Meeting
Last
controls. To move to
lingering
an item, press the arrow keys.
questions.
Alt S.
We have 5 minutes. Is there anything in the chat that we've missed that we could answer now? Or?
So the person who asked about heading level 2 before is asking, wouldn't it be more productive for it to say header for weeks instead of header level 2? Again, the heading level 2 is the semantic information that the screen reader is picking up based on the code. So you don't have any control over that particular announcement. But the text that is being presented for that heading, it definitely does need to be productive. And that's why it said showing X number of events for the week of whatever. So that's the text that we as the development team created. And the heading level 2 was just the semantic information provided by the screen reader.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are not in control of what it says about the heading, other than what tag it is. Heading 2, heading 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, whatever it is. But how it says it, we have no control over that. If that's feedback that you feel strongly about, you can definitely reach out to Freedom Scientific or NVDA or Apple and VoiceOver to let them know that.
And again, remember that because we can navigate by heading levels specifically, if I have been to this calendar several times and I know that heading level 3s are the days, for instance, then I can just quickly go day by day, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. But I wouldn't know that unless I did get that semantic information. So if it didn't say heading level 2, heading level 3, I would never learn that about the way that this.
Yeah, this is just a
product is set up.
fundamental way of how screen readers work. And that's how, blind people are already used to all of that verbiage. You should be mindful not to make your labels too long, of course, or your link, but yeah. So somebody did ask about, I'm paraphrasing here. Do you know anybody who's working on, improving the state of the art of maps? Basically, that I had mentioned it's in its infancy stages. That's my opinion. That's my view of it. But I'm gonna just share some things here. So W3C and the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are a good place to start. Then you might want to reach out to some accessibility vendors like Equal Access or DQ Systems, Level Access. I know that Equal Access had written some blogs about maps and accessibility in the past, so they have worked on this. But yeah, I think, checking out the top accessibility vendors that are out there. Another one is City Mouse. Just want to shout out John Kirkwood. Yeah, so once again, DQ Systems, Level Access, UsableNet is another one, Equal Access, and City Mouse. Anything else that maybe Arthur or Tim wants to add?
I think you're right. There's a lot of work obviously still needs to be done for making maps more accessible, but a lot of it has to do with a couple of different things. I mean, the mapping technologies, interactive mapping in particular, it's been going through quite a lot of changes over the past decade. Things that were simply sent back from a server as a dynamically generated JPEG as a picture for the user to see. Now, now you have base maps, and then you have overlays, and you have vector-based tile information that, isn't actually just a picture. It's got data attached to it that can be read by code, but generally gets rendered into an HTML canvas element. So that element itself is not really anything other than a client-side dynamically generated image. But the code, can start to now be looking at elements of what goes into that image and build HTML components to go along with the picture that are generated directly from the data that's going into the picture. So that's a pretty cool thing that's happening now. Vector tiles also are something that we'll be able to use to allow a lot more of the user control over what the map looks like you had mentioned earlier, being able to control contrast or transparency. And so that's something that the user can do, with a little bit of code that changes the styles of the different vector elements. And then the other thing is the purpose of the map. And one of the things that Wale and I worked pretty closely on for a while was, the kinds of finder applications is what we call them in New York City. We've done a number of them through the years where an agency has, like, I'll just throw one in the chat here. Department of Health had asked us to do this map. This is from self-reporting restaurants on what their accessibility features, that they have accessibility features for wheelchairs to get in and out of the place, use the restroom, and so forth. And so when you have this kind of Finder app use case, it was fairly easy to generate a good screen reader experience by providing a list of the facilities that are on the map alongside the map. So the screen reader isn't really analyzing the map at all. It's just analyzing the list of things that appear next to the map. And when you search the map for a location, you say you want to know what accessible restaurants are near your home or near your work, then it will sort those locations in order of nearest to furthest from the address you entered, and so on, and the ability to filter the list and all of that kind of stuff that Wally had spoke about. Unfortunately, a lot of the work that we did over the past years is being sort of put aside for a new contract where we're having a vendor redo a lot of this stuff. And so we're that was the DOT map, I think, was from that vendor.
Yeah.
But we're working closely with the vendor to build into their product, these things as first considerations. The wheelchair friendly restaurant locator that I put in the chat started out as a product, as something else that Wally mentioned early on, was to try and do it after the fact can be very difficult. And this was an after the fact. I had been using a framework using the Open Layers, which is a mapping library, and then a little framework around it that makes it easier for us to do repetitive tasks. And then we kind of tried to do our best to make it more usable by screen reader users. And I think we did a pretty good job with that on the framework. But now we're sort of in this transition period, and we're trying to work with the vendor who's going to be providing a lot of this functionality in the future.
Yep, absolutely. And just unfortunately, we have to wrap up. It is past 4. So yes. So Dave asked it, when you press 2, the screen reader will go to the next heading level 2. That is it, depending on what screen reader you're using. I'm using JAWS. So we are past time, so we do have to end it here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy that so many people came to the Zoom, and hopefully folks watched on the Disability Unite website as well. Just if you would like to keep in touch with us or download our accessibility guides, which we've updated recently. They don't have anything on maps and data visualizations, but you can download them on www.nyc.gov/accessibility guides. And I'm going to quickly spell that: ACCESSIBILITYGUIDES. I did that for the interpreters. So yeah, nyc.gov/accessibility guides to download our guides on getting started with web accessibility, creating accessible documents using Word, creating accessible documents using Adobe InDesign, holding an accessible virtual meeting, making your social media posts accessible, and making videos accessible as well. So download our free and accessible guides at nyc.gov/accessibility guides. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we hope that you'll join us next time. Enjoy the rest of your Global Accessibility Awareness Day, everybody. So, Tim, if you want to say goodbye, Arthur, anyone else, feel free.
So long, everybody.